Alright guys, welcome back to Tech Tanks. This is actually going to be a pretty quick video here. Um, this is going into the intro to hacking playlist. And this is just something that it wasn't explained to me very well when I first started on this whole, hacking journey. And so I wanted to make sure you guys got got a pretty good explanation on it. For hacking, it is pretty much a critical, necessary thing to have um, a lab setup. Okay, and when I heard the term lab before, I thought it was like, oh, you're going to load up a piece of software to, try to figure out memory buffer overflow. And that's pretty much it. And that is not the case, actually. So you need a lab setup not only for that, but also just you're going to come across a lot of different software, a lot of different content management systems, um, various types of updates that happen to software, a lot of different things. Recently, Windows had an update that actually the last couple updates, if I remember correctly, caused a whole lot of um, zero-day exploits to happen. Like people, gone through the system and checked to see if there's ways to exploit it. The way they did that was they had a lab setup. So your lab should, well, at least in my opinion, it should consist of uh, a few different operating systems. Obviously, you need to have your hacking one, whichever one you choose. Windows is probably a pretty critical one since it's such a popular operating system in there. And then you should also have a couple different Linux distros. So I personally like to run Ubuntu and CentOS. Um, but you need to have several more available. And I always recommend having multiple um, versions available. So what I mean by that is for Ubuntu, I actually pretty much have almost every Ubuntu, well, major Ubuntu release from, Ubuntu, I'm gonna just refer to it as like Ubuntu 15, all the way up through the current, Ubuntu 20. Um, the reason why I have that is because, as you'll find in the wild, people don't update their operating systems like they should. Um, Ignore the fact that I have a update is available on the bottom right here. Keep in mind, this is what you're actually seeing right here is actually a lab. This is not my host operating system. So sometimes it's intentional to leave that, not updated. With that being said, I want to show you a few things to just kind of help guide you to that point. So first of all, I'm not a huge fan of breaking the bank. I don't want to spend a whole lot of money just to have, software that I'm planning on breaking and, things like that. So with that being said, um, I'm going to show you two free options on hosting virtual machines, and I'll tell you the pros and cons of both of them, at least from my own experience. And then we're going to talk about the operating systems, because you can actually get Windows, you can run it for free, kind of indefinitely, kind of not. And we'll talk about a few options there. So first of all, hosting your virtual machines. Oracle's VirtualBox is 100% free. Um, so this is definitely one option, and I do have this one. And then I also have VM Workstation. VM Workstation. So there's pros and cons to both. My preference, honestly, is actually VMware Workstation. For me, it just seems to work better. Some people have said, well, you can't pull up multiple operating systems at the same time. Actually, yes, you can. You do not need the Pro version, which is the one that costs, in order to do that. All I do is after I launch a virtual machine, I just right-click on the icon that I have in the taskbar, and I just tell it to open VMware Workstation again, and then I just open up the next operating system. So it can be done. So this one for me is my preferred one, but there's a huge drawback to it, which is you cannot take snapshots in the free version, which that sucks. You used to be able to, but with the versions out now, you cannot. So with that being said, that's a huge drawback for some people. Whereas VirtualBox, you can take snapshots. And as a matter of fact, if it is a something important that I'm doing with um, if it's something important that I'm doing on a virtual machine, where I don't want to take the chance of it, going south, or it's like if it does go south because I break something, I want to be able to pull it back up. Um, that's where I use VirtualBox. So I do use both. I use Workstation for the most part for most of my um, hacking purposes and things like that when I'm doing hack the box or whatever the case may be. But if I'm doing internal stuff, um, such as, for example, I recently had to create a server, and then I needed to hack that server. And obviously, I did not want to have to recreate the server specifications again and again and again in the event something got corrupted or damaged. So I put it into VirtualBox, and then I would just create a snapshot. It's like, okay, here's my known good point. I'm gonna just go ahead and have a heyday. And I actually had to restore it a couple times because things just got completely screwed up, which that happens at times. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. So you can download either one of these. You just search for this one. It's really easy. Just search VirtualBox download, and it'll take you right to here. Again, that's a great option. This one was a little bit harder to find. And when I say a little bit harder, I mean I do really mean a little bit. And when you go to download, like, there is a paid version. Okay, I think it's referred to as VMware Workstation Pro. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't do the paid version. Like I said, I like to keep it cheap. Um, but those are the two options that I recommend for doing virtual machines. Now there are other options out there that are available. Um, to each their own. These are the two I recommend personally. And by the way, with each of these, you do have methods to being able to keep it completely internal. What I mean by that is, if you host up, you guys saw me, if you watch my CEH videos, I recently posted a video about web application hacking. I am actually hosting those web applications on a server using, I think that one I was using the VMware. I obviously don't want those available for other people to hit, so what I do is I run it completely on an internal network within the VMware itself. You can do the same thing with VirtualBox. VirtualBox, you need a little bit of command line usage, and you can actually create a DHCP server, so that way you can just load up a operating system at any point and assign it to a specific network interface, and it has a DHCP running on it, and it just automatically assigns IP addresses. So that's really nice. Either one of these can do it. So as far as for the ease of it, I think VMware is a little bit easier to do it with, but I think VirtualBox kind of did a little bit better in the end on that part. So either way, there's that, and that is pretty critical if you load up something vulnerable such as DVWA, Juice Shop. You do not want these public facing on anything that could be accessible to your network. Okay? So, anywho, there's that part. The next thing is operating system. So, I do also have some Apple devices for hacking purposes, and Android devices as well. But with Apple devices, I actually do use a Mac computer. That is obviously a very expensive route to go when it comes to hacking, because if you screw it up, it is done. It's pretty hard to go back from that, so you definitely want to be cautious if you go that route. But I would say Mac is probably going to be the least needed thing in your lab. Now, the reason for that is not because Apple is unhackable. That is completely false. But it is because Apple is going to be the lowest type of target for you. It's not used as often as Windows. Windows dominates the computer industry. And then as far as for servers, it's either going to be Windows or Linux. And that's pretty much the end of that. So Mac itself is not a big target. And this goes for your pen testing. 90% of what you come across is going to be either Windows or Linux. Actually, I'd say 95%. And the other 5% is just odd things that happen. Okay? So, anyway, for the operating systems, we'll start with Windows because that's the one where it's like it's a real pain in the butt. If you go to the Evaluation Center, um, you can download Windows 10. They have Windows Server. Um, I mean, you got a lot of options. Office 365 Deployment Live Kit, which one thing that I think is absolutely critical, you need to have Office 365 on the system, not uh, um, where you can use it online and all that. You want it on your computer. The reason for that is some of what you should be practicing is macros. Okay, like macro hacking. Um, Windows used to do it, and some people still have it set up this way. I've come across it a few times where people will have it to where like Word will automatically execute macros. Doesn't even ask, just automatically does it. You can actually create a backward shell, or I'm sorry, reverse shell, um, from a Word document. So, and the first time I actually came across that was in the PWK, the course for OSCP. In one of their labs, it was basically like, hey, make sure you upload this document. We check for this document every 20 minutes or something like that. And it's a .docx document. And yeah, you just throw some macros on there and you can get yourself a reverse shell pretty quickly. So definitely find a way to get Word and all that on there. But here you can download it for 90 days. Okay. That 90 days allows you to try it out, evaluate it. You do need to supply an email. So I'll hit continue here. This information is not validated, I don't think. The email, I can't remember. I don't think it is either. But this information is not validated. So you don't have to supply real information. You can supply fake information. Doesn't matter. But it allows you to download a ISO, and then you can put that into a virtual machine. Okay. And then for most Linux distributions, if you just type in the version of Linux and download, you will find it. I do recommend only getting it from trusted sources. For example, if I saw, a GitHub with Ubuntu on it, I probably wouldn't touch it. That's just me. I would rather go to ubuntu.com and download it from there. Always check the hashes if it's available. That's just a good idea. But that's how you can get your operating systems going. And you can check different operating systems. Now, the reason why this is important, recently there was a system that I was hacking into, and it was hosting a very specific content management system. And that very specific content management system did have a vulnerability, but I didn't have access to that vulnerability on the system I was attacking. So the best way to go about it was I actually loaded that CMS into a similar operating system, and then I ran the vulnerability on my system to find out basically exactly what was needed without being able to see it on the system that I was attacking. And then I just copied that information right on over, and I changed a few things that were necessary to change, but I was able to get in. And it was from me being able to host the same CMS on the same OS, and that solved my problems. Okay. Definitely if you're attacking some kind of application and memory buffer overflow, it'd be nice to be able to put that on a system where you can test it, try it multiple times, and just kind of see how it will end up working. Because also you don't want to, whether it is a pen test or, well, okay, that should be the only time you're doing this. So whether it's a pen test or not, or some kind of red teaming activity, typically the goal is don't get caught, or at least make it a little more difficult. Don't just throw everything in the kitchen sink at your target, because you want to see if their defense systems are working in a legitimate attack. And a legitimate attack would not, well, hey, I'm going to just randomly throw this crap at you and let's see what happens. They wait the whole point is to avoid being caught. So test it out on a lab system. Know what the potential vulnerabilities are, because memory buffer overflow is not always an option. Okay, even if they don't sanitize their input, if you do if the programmer took the time to actually make sure that random memory addresses are set up, it's really, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's really hard to do a buffer overflow attack, because you can't target the same spot every single time. You need to be able to do that. So with that being said, um, download your operating systems, get those checked out, okay, and have some options. Where you want to spend your money is honestly in the hardware of your system, and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It really doesn't. I personally dropped some good money on my computer. I wanted to make sure I had plenty of RAM, a processor that could handle it. Hard drive space is going to be a big deal, but you could probably get away if you have a terabyte hard drive, 16 gigs of memory, and a pretty solid CPU. You're good. Um, but another thing that you could do, which I've done before, is um, I actually have operating systems. Like I have a Windows 7, Windows 8. I think I even have a Windows 95. But all these are loaded into a external hard drive. I don't keep them on my computer because I don't come across those very often, so I don't need to. But if I need them, I just plug that into my computer, and then I can essentially, just boot them right up, because they're already loaded as a virtual machine for both VirtualBox and VMware. So whichever one I'm going to be using, I just pull up there. I just open up that external hard drive, and when I go to click on the VMware version, for example, it'll just automatically load it into VMware. Problem solved. So you don't have to store everything on the actual computer itself. You can put it on external storage devices, which with your Kali system, I highly recommend actually having it on a USB. Always have one version on a USB. Okay. I actually have it on I do have a virtual machine. I have two virtual machines of Kali. I have a laptop with Kali loaded on it only. That is the main operating system. But I also have a USB. It is referred to as a persistent um, bootable USB drive. And you can get the details on how to do that, I think, from Offensive Security. Pretty sure. I think they have a thing on here. So this is pretty much where you want to go to do anything related to Kali Linux. So guys, hopefully this helps as far as for why a lab is important. It makes sure that you're able to, go dark theme. It makes sure you are able to test out different things, but it also allows you to become very familiar with the operating systems. Okay, that's another critical thing. So set up a lab, keep it simple at first, but then that way you have something that you are able to work with. Oh, also, quick thing. If you notice, there's Wireshark down here. I've had some people ask, why don't people hack with Windows computers? You kind of can. Most tools are available for Linux. There are tools that are available for Windows. You actually can get the Metasploit framework on there. Just FYI, your antivirus software is going to freak out when you do. It was pretty entertaining. I decided to try loading it onto a Surface that I had, and I think I got about 2,000 alerts, like 45 seconds into my download. So it was pretty crazy. But Linux has a lot more versatility and a lot more. These tools can be resource intensive, and so my thing is always I want the least resource intensive operating system to be running them. That's pretty much Linux. It does not require a lot of resources, and to kind of drive that source home a little bit, I have a computer that is 14 years old, give or take. Okay, it's a really old laptop computer. and it had Windows on there. I removed Windows and I loaded up Ubuntu, the most recent version of Ubuntu, the most stable version of Ubuntu, and it runs like a champ. It really does. I'm able to watch movies, surf the web. I do some Python scripting on there, working on that, and Bash scripts run on there constantly. It runs just as well as my top performing Windows laptop. That's pretty insane, but it's not resource intensive. So keep that in mind, especially when you're doing your virtual machines. You don't need to dedicate a lot of stuff. Your Ubuntu does not need 16 gigabytes of memory. Honestly, I think I run most of my Ubuntu's at about 4 gigabytes of memory. Maybe 16 if I'm wanting to run a whole lot of different stuff on there at once and push it to its limits. So anyway, there you go, guys. Lab, get it set up, get it running. You can run it on a laptop, desktop, doesn't matter. I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks for watching.